The Galactic Academy was the biggest school in the known universe. Students from hundreds of different planets came here to learn. The main building was so large that it took 30 minutes to walk from one end to the other. The walls were made of a strange metal that changed color depending on the time of day. Right now, they were a soft blue because it was morning. Inside one of the largest lecture halls, more than 200 students sat in curved rows that went up like stairs. The seats were designed to fit many different body types. Some were wide for the bigger species. Some had holes for tails. Some were filled with water for the species that could not breathe air. Professor Veltron stood at the front of the room. He was an insectoid, which meant his body looked like a giant insect. He had 4 arms, each one thin but very strong. His eyes were large and made of thousands of tiny parts, like a fly's eyes. When he looked at something, his whole head turned because his eyes could not move on their own. He had been teaching at the academy for 60 years, and he was considered one of the smartest professors in his field. Today's lecture was about combat classifications. The Galactic Union had created a system to rank every known species based on how dangerous they were in a fight. This information was important for military planning, peacekeeping missions, and sometimes just for safety. A large holographic screen floated in the air behind Professor Veltron. It showed pictures and data that changed as he spoke. Today we will discuss the species from a small planet called Earth, Veltron said. His voice was clicking and buzzing, but the translator devices that everyone wore made his words clear. The dominant species calls themselves humans. The screen showed a picture of Earth. It was a small blue and green planet with white clouds. Next to it appeared images of humans. They looked soft and weak compared to most other species in the room. In the back row, a young woman sat quietly. Her name was Emily, and she was 23 years old. She had brown hair that she kept tied back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were a calm gray color, and her face showed no expression as she listened to the professor. She was the only human in this class. Actually, she was one of only 12 humans at the entire academy. Emily had grown up in a small town in Ohio, a state in a country called the United States on Earth. She had always been a good student, and she had worked very hard to earn a place at the academy. Most of her classmates barely noticed her. She was small and quiet, and she never caused any trouble. Professor Veltron continued his lecture. Humans are classified as a tool-dependent species. They are in Category 7 on our combat scale. This is the second lowest category, just above Category 8, which includes species that cannot fight at all. A picture appeared showing the classification chart. Category 1 was for the most dangerous species. Category 10 was for species that were completely harmless. Humans were marked at Category 7. As you can see from their physical specifications, Veltron said, humans have no natural weapons. They have no claws worth mentioning. Their teeth are small and flat, designed for eating plants and cooked meat, not for fighting. They have no armor, no protective shell, no thick hide. Their skin is soft and tears easily. Several students made sounds of agreement. A group of Krell students near the front clicked their armored jaws together. The Krell were large creatures with hard shells covering their entire bodies. They had big claws that could cut through metal. They were classified as Category 2, which meant they were extremely dangerous. Humans also lack venom or poison of any kind, Veltron continued. They cannot spray acid. They cannot produce electrical shocks. They have no natural way to attack an enemy without using tools. A Vorn student raised one of its tentacles. The Vorn were like giant octopuses that could survive on land. Each of their 8 tentacles ended in a sharp blade made of bone. Professor, how did such a weak species become dominant on their planet? Veltron nodded, which was a gesture he had learned from working with many different species. An excellent question. Humans survived and became dominant entirely because of their tool-making ability. They created weapons because their bodies could not compete with the predators on their world. They made spears, knives, bows, and eventually guns and bombs. Without these tools, humans are essentially helpless. Emily's jaw tightened slightly, but she said nothing. Her gray eyes stayed fixed on the professor. Historical records show that early humans were prey animals, Veltrin said. They were hunted by large cats, bears, wolves, and many other predators. They survived only by hiding, running away, and eventually by creating weapons to defend themselves. The screen showed pictures of ancient humans holding primitive spears. They looked scared and weak next to the large predators around them. In conclusion, Veltrin said, if you ever encounter a human without their weapons, they pose almost no threat. Their combat doctrine relies entirely on manufactured tools. Remove the tools, and you remove the danger. A large Krell named Gorath sat a few seats away from Emily. He was nearly 8 feet tall, and his shell was a deep red color that showed he came from an important family. He turned his massive head toward Emily and leaned closer. Do not feel bad, human, Garth said. His voice was deep and rumbling. It is simply biology. Your species found another way to survive. You should be proud of your machines and weapons. They have made you successful despite your physical weakness. He meant it as a kind thing to say, but Emily did not smile. Instead, she raised her hand. The movement was slow and calm. She did not wave her arm or make any urgent gesture. She simply lifted her hand and waited. Professor Veltrin's compound eyes turned toward her. The thousands of tiny lenses in his eyes all focused on the small human in the back row. Yes, student? Do you have a question? Emily lowered her hand and stood up from her seat. Every eye in the room turned to look at her. She was so small compared to most of the other students. A Krell could crush her with one claw. A Vorn could slice her in half with one tentacle. Even Professor Veltrin could probably tear her apart with his 4 strong arms. But Emily did not look afraid. I would like to challenge that classification, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. It carried across the lecture hall without any effort. With your permission, Professor, I would like to offer a practical demonstration. The room went completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the water in the tanks for the aquatic students seemed to go still. Gorath made a sound that was like laughter. It sounded like rocks being rubbed together. You, little human? What could you possibly demonstrate? Emily looked at him with her calm gray eyes. That humans do not need tools to fight, and that your classification system is wrong. The silence in the lecture hall lasted for a long time. Nobody could believe what the small human had just said. She wanted to challenge the official combat classification of her entire species. She wanted to prove that the Galactic Union was wrong about humans. Gorath stood up from his seat. When he stood at his full height, he was nearly 8 feet tall. His red shell gleamed under the lights of the lecture hall. His claws were each as long as Emily's forearm, and they looked sharp enough to cut through stone. He walked down the steps toward the demonstration floor at the front of the room, and each step made a heavy thudding sound. Little human, Gorath said, I have fought enemies from 12 different planets. I have killed creatures twice my size. My shell can stop bullets. My claws can tear through metal. And you want to challenge me with your bare hands? Emily also walked down the steps. She moved smoothly, almost like she was flowing down the stairs instead of walking. Several students who belonged to predator species noticed the way she moved. There was something about it that made them feel strange. It was too controlled, too purposeful. I am not challenging you specifically, Emily said. I am challenging the idea that humans cannot fight without weapons. You are simply the one who offered to prove me wrong. Professor Veltrin watched this exchange with great interest. His antennae The two long feelers on top of his head twitched back and forth. This was a sign that he was thinking very hard about something. "Student Emily," Veltrin said, "what exactly are you proposing?" Emily reached the demonstration floor and turned to face the professor. "A supervised sparring match. No weapons. No tools of any kind. Just our bodies. If Gareth defeats me, then the classification stands, and I will never question it again. If I defeat him, then the Union must reconsider how it classifies humans." Gareth laughed again. The sound echoed through the hall. "This is madness. I could kill you by accident. I could crush you with one claw without even trying. This is not a fair fight." "I know," Emily said simply. "That is the point." Students began pulling out their recording devices. Small flying cameras rose into the air. Word spread quickly through the Academy's network. Within a few minutes, the observation gallery above the lecture hall filled with curious onlookers. Students and professors from other classes came to watch. Species from dozens of different planets pressed against the windows, all trying to see the small human who had challenged a Krell warrior. Emily removed her jacket. Underneath, she wore a simple gray training shirt. Her arms were not big or muscular like a fighter's arms might be. She looked like an ordinary young woman. She looked like someone who had never been in a fight in her life. She began to stretch. She bent forward and touched her toes. She twisted her body from side to side. She rolled her neck in slow circles. Every movement was precise and controlled. Gareth watched her with a mixture of confusion and pity. He did not understand why she was doing this. He was going to hurt her, probably badly, and she was acting like she was preparing for a dance. "Human," Gareth said, and this time his voice was gentler. "I do not wish to harm you. You are small and soft. If I hit you with my full strength, I will break every bone in your body. Please, take back your challenge. There is no shame in admitting that your species has physical limitations." Emily finished stretching and stood in a relaxed position. Her hands hung loosely at her sides. Her feet were placed about shoulder-width apart. She looked completely calm. "I understand your concern," she said, "and I appreciate that you do not want to hurt me. But I need to do this. Not for my pride, but for the truth." Professor Veltrin made his decision. "Very well. I will allow this demonstration, but we will have safety measures in place." He pressed several buttons on his control panel. A shimmering blue barrier appeared around the demonstration floor. This barrier would contain the fight and protect the audience. Medical drones flew down from the ceiling and hovered nearby, ready to provide emergency treatment. "The rules are simple," Veltrin announced. "No weapons. No outside assistance. The match ends when one fighter surrenders, is knocked unconscious, or is unable to continue. Both fighters must accept that injury is possible." "I accept," Gareth said immediately. "I accept," Emily said. The students in the audience leaned forward. Many of them had never seen a human in a real fight before. Most of them expected this to be very short. The Krell was simply too big, too strong, and too well-armored. The human would probably be knocked out with the first hit. Some students felt sorry for Emily. They thought she was being foolish and would get hurt for no good reason. Others thought she was brave but stupid. A few were simply curious about what would happen. Gareth took his fighting stance. He spread his forelegs wide for balance. He raised both claws in front of his body. His tail, which was thick and covered with spikes, swayed behind him, ready to strike. He looked like a living tank, an unstoppable force of armor and blades. Emily did not take any special stance. She just stood there with her hands at her sides. She was breathing slowly and deeply. Her gray eyes were focused on Gareth's center of mass, not on his claws or his face. "You may begin when you are ready," Professor Veltrin announced. Gareth waited for Emily to make the first move. When she did not move at all, he became confused. Was she frozen with fear? Had she changed her mind? Human? He called out, "Are you going to fight, or are you going to stand there?" Emily smiled at him. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of her lips. But there was something in that smile that made Gareth feel uncomfortable. It was not the smile of someone who was afraid. It was not the smile of someone who was about to lose Dot. It was the smile of someone who knew something that he did not. "I am ready," Emily said quietly. "Whenever you are." Gareth decided that he would end this quickly. He would charge at her, grab her with one claw, and hold her gently until she surrendered. He would not hurt her. He would just show her that she could not possibly win against someone like him. He took a deep breath and prepared to charge. Emily's smile grew, just a little bit wider. And in the observation gallery, a professor of xenobiology who had studied humans for 30 years suddenly stood up from his seat. His face had gone pale. He had seen that smile before in old Earth videos. He had seen it on the faces of human soldiers before a battle. He had seen it on the faces of human athletes before a competition. He knew what that smile meant. It meant that the fight was about to begin for real. Gareth charged. His species, the Krell, could run very fast despite their heavy armor. He crossed the distance between them in less than 2 seconds. His claws swept through the air in a wide pattern that was meant to trap prey between them. No creature could escape this attack. He had used it 100 times before, and it had never failed. But Emily was not there. She moved in a way that Gareth had never seen before. She did not run away. She did not try to block his claws. Instead, she stepped to the side at the last possible moment and turned her body so that his claws passed within inches of her skin without touching her. At the same time, her right palm shot forward. It struck a very specific spot on Gareth's body, right where 2 plates of his armored shell came together at his chest. There was a gap there, a tiny weakness where the plates met. Emily's palm hit that exact spot with perfect accuracy. Gareth stumbled. Pain shot through his chest. That spot was supposed to be protected. The gap was so small that most species did not even know it existed. How did this human know about it? How did she hit it so precisely? "The gap between your 3rd and 4th thoracic plates," Emily said calmly. She was already moving again, circling around him like water flowing around a rock. "There is soft tissue underneath. Every armor has weak points. You just have to know where to look." The audience was completely silent. Nobody could believe what they had just seen. The small human had not only dodged the Krell's attack, but she had actually hurt him. She had found a weakness in his armor that most warriors never even noticed. Gareth spun around to face her. He was not amused anymore. He was angry. His pride was hurt. He attacked again, faster this time. His tail swept low, trying to knock her legs out from under her. At the same time, both of his claws slashed high, aiming to catch her no matter which way she dodged. It was a perfect combination attack. Low and high at the same time. There was no way to avoid both. Emily dropped to the ground. Not backward, not to the side, but straight down. She fell flat and rolled underneath his sweeping tail. Before Gareth could react, she was behind him. She rose to her knees and drove her elbow into the back of his lowest leg, right into the joint where the leg connected to his body. The joint bent the wrong way. Gareth's leg buckled, and he crashed down onto one knee. The floor cracked from the impact of his heavy body. The audience gasped. Several students stood up from their seats. Professor Veltron's antennae were standing straight up, a sign of extreme surprise. Emily stood up smoothly and continued to circle the fallen Krell. Her breathing was still calm and steady. She was not tired at all. "Humans spent 200,000 years fighting everything on our planet," she said. Her voice was clear and carried to every corner of the lecture hall. We fought predators. We fought prey. We fought each other. We did not just learn to make weapons. We learned to make our bodies into weapons. Gorath pushed himself back up to his feet. His leg hurt, but it was not broken. He turned to face Emily with new respect in his eyes. He had underestimated her. He would not make that mistake again. He attacked more carefully this time. He used short, quick strikes instead of big, sweeping attacks. He kept his guard up and watched for her movements. Emily met his attacks directly, but she did not block them with force. Instead, she redirected them. When his claw came toward her, she would place her hand on his arm and push it slightly to the side. The claw would miss her by inches, and Gorath would stumble because his own strength was being used against him. This technique comes from a discipline called Aikido, Emily explained while she fought. It was created by a man in Japan, a country on Earth. The idea is simple. You do not fight against your enemy's strength. You use their strength against them. She demonstrated by catching Gorath's right claw as it swung toward her head. She did not try to stop it. Instead, she pulled it in the direction it was already going, adding her own force to his. At the same time, she stepped behind him and twisted. Gorath flipped through the air. His massive armored body rotated completely and crashed onto his back. The floor cracked even more. The whole lecture hall shook from the impact. For a moment, Gorath just lay there, staring up at the ceiling. He could not understand what had happened. He weighed over 800 pounds. His armor alone weighed 200 pounds. And yet this tiny human, who probably weighed less than 150 pounds, had thrown him like he was a child's toy. That was judo, Emily said. She was standing over him now, looking down at his confused face. It means the gentle way in Japanese. It was designed specifically to allow smaller humans to defeat larger, stronger opponents. The audience had stopped being silent. Now they were making sounds of amazement and disbelief. Students were talking to each other in excited whispers. Some were cheering. Others were too shocked to do anything but stare. Gorath tried to get up, but Emily was faster. She moved around to his side and wrapped her arm around his neck, squeezing it against the only unarmored part of his body, the soft tissue of his throat. At the same time, she wrapped her legs around his arm, trapping it so he could not use it. This is called a rear naked choke, Emily said. It cuts off blood flow to the brain. In humans, it causes unconsciousness in about 10 seconds. I'm not sure how long it takes for Crow. Should we find out? Gorath struggled. He thrashed and twisted and tried to throw her off. But no matter how he moved, Emily stayed attached to him like she was glued there. Her grip was unbreakable. He could feel the pressure on his throat increasing. His vision began to darken around the edges. I yield, Gorath said. His voice was choked and weak. I yield. The match is yours. Emily immediately released him. She rolled away and stood up in one smooth motion. She was breathing a little faster now, but she was not injured at all. Not a single scratch on her body. Gorath lay on the broken floor, gasping for breath. His whole body ached. His pride was in pieces. He had been completely defeated by a creature that his people considered helpless. The lecture hall exploded with noise. Students were shouting, cheering, arguing. Some refused to believe what they had seen. Others were already researching human martial arts on their devices. Professor Veltrin walked slowly toward the demonstration floor. His compound eyes were fixed on Emily with an expression that might have been wonder. Explain, he said simply. Explain what we just witnessed. Emily turned to face the crowd. She was still calm, still controlled. She had just defeated one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and she acted like it was nothing special. Humans do not fight barehanded because we have to, she said. We fight barehanded because we chose to turn it into an art. Over thousands of years, we created hundreds of different martial arts. Each one was designed for a different purpose. Each one was tested in real combat, again and again, until only the most effective techniques survived. She looked at Gorath, who was slowly sitting up. Your species has natural weapons, so you never needed to develop fighting techniques. You rely on your claws and your armor. But humans had nothing, so we learned to use everything. Our hands, our elbows, our knees, our heads, our entire bodies became weapons. The room was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was the silence of people whose entire understanding of the universe had just changed. Gorath sat on the cracked floor of the demonstration area. His armor was scratched in several places. His joints ached. His throat was sore from the chokehold. But the thing that hurt most was his pride. He had been defeated in front of hundreds of students. He had been beaten by a creature that he had thought was harmless. He looked up at Emily. She was standing a few feet away, waiting patiently. She did not look proud or happy about her victory. She did not mock him or celebrate. She just waited. Emily extended her hand toward him. It was a human gesture that meant she was offering to help him stand up. Gorath stared at her hand for a long moment. It was so small compared to his claw. It looked so weak and soft. And yet that hand had just defeated him completely. He reached out and took her hand. What happened next surprised everyone in the room, including Gorath himself. Emily pulled him up to his feet. She should not have been able to do this. Gorath weighed over 800 pounds with his armor. Emily weighed less than 150 pounds. It was physically impossible for her to lift him, but she did not lift him. She used leverage. She positioned her body so that when she pulled, his own weight helped him rise. She used angles and timing instead of raw strength. By the time Gorath realized what was happening, he was already standing. How did you do that? Gorath asked. His voice was filled with wonder. You are too small to lift me. I did not lift you, Emily said. I helped you lift yourself. That is one of the first lessons we learn. Strength is not about muscles. Strength is about using your body correctly. Professor Veltrin had come down to the demonstration floor. His forearms were folded across his chest, a posture that meant he was thinking very deeply about something. His compound eyes studied Emily with intense curiosity. Student Emily, the professor said, you have shown us something remarkable. But I need to understand more. How can a species with no natural weapons develop such effective combat techniques? Emily nodded. She had expected this question. May I use the holographic display, Professor? Veltrin gestured toward the display with one of his arms. Emily walked over to the control panel and began entering commands. Images appeared in the air above the demonstration floor. Humans have been developing martial arts for at least 4,000 years, Emily said. Probably longer, but that is how far back our records go. Let me show you some examples. The first image showed ancient humans wearing loose white clothing. They were practicing precise movements with their hands and feet. This is karate, Emily said. It was developed on a small island called Okinawa, in a country called Japan. The people there were forbidden from carrying weapons, so they learned to fight with their bodies. They trained their hands until they could break wood and stone. The image changed to show humans kicking at each other with incredible speed and power. Their legs moved so fast they were almost a blur. This is Taekwondo, from a country called Korea. It focuses on kicks. Human legs are much stronger than human arms, so this style uses that advantage. A trained Taekwondo fighter can break bones with a single kick. More images appeared. Humans wrestling on the ground. Humans using knees and elbows. Humans doing acrobatic flips and spins. Muay Thai from Thailand, which uses elbows and knees as weapons. Wrestling from many different cultures, which focuses on controlling an opponent on the ground. Capoeira from Brazil, which was disguised as a dance so that slaves could practice fighting without their masters knowing. A Vorn student raised one of its tentacles. It was the same student who had asked a question earlier in the lecture. This is fascinating, but I still do not understand something. Why would humans spend so much time learning to fight without weapons? If you had weapons, why not just use them? Emily smiled. It was a warm smile, the kind a teacher gives when a student asks a good question. Several reasons, she said. First, weapons can be taken away. If you are captured or disarmed, your weapon is gone. But your body is always with you. A fighter who knows martial arts is never truly unarmed. She held up a second finger. Second, weapons can fail. They can break, run out of ammunition, or malfunction. Your body does not have these problems. A third finger went up. Third, there are situations where weapons cannot be used. What if you are in a crowd? What if there are innocent people nearby? What if using a weapon would cause more problems than it solves? In these cases, knowing how to fight with your body gives you options. And fourth, Emily said, and her smile grew a little wider, we find it fun. The translator devices struggled with that last word. For many species, the concept of enjoying combat training was strange. Fighting was serious. Fighting was dangerous. Why would anyone do it for pleasure? Emily could see the confusion on many faces. Let me explain. Humans enjoy challenges. We enjoy pushing ourselves to become better. We enjoy competing against each other to see who is strongest, fastest, or most skilled. Martial arts give us all of these things. We train because it makes us stronger. We compete because it tests our abilities. And yes, we enjoy it. Gorath nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. On my world, we fight only when necessary. We do not practice fighting because our natural weapons are enough. But you humans practice fighting every day, even when there is no enemy to fight. Exactly, Emily said. We have training halls in every city on Earth. Millions of humans practice martial arts regularly. Some train for self-defense. Some train for competition. Some train just to stay healthy and strong. But all of them are becoming better fighters every single day. Professor Veltron's antennae twitched. And these different martial arts, they were developed independently? In different parts of your planet? Yes, Emily said. That is one of the most interesting things about human martial arts. Because humans were separated into different groups for most of our history, we developed different fighting styles in different places. And each style was shaped by the environment and culture where it was created. She brought up more images. In places with cold weather, humans developed grappling styles that kept fighters close together for warmth. In places with hot weather, humans developed striking styles that did not require grabbing sweaty opponents. In places where people wore armor, humans developed techniques to attack the gaps in that armor. In places where people wore loose clothing, humans developed techniques to grab and use that clothing. The images showed an incredible variety of fighting techniques. Throws and locks and strikes and chokes. Standing and on the ground. Fast and slow. Hard and soft. Every style has strengths and weaknesses, Emily continued. So many humans train in multiple styles. They take the best techniques from each and combine them into their own personal fighting system. This is called mixed martial arts. A student from a species that Emily did not recognize called out, "How do you know which techniques are the best?" "We test them," Emily said simply. "We fight each other in competitions. We see what works and what does not work. The techniques that fail are abandoned. The techniques that succeed are adopted. Over thousands of years, This process has created fighting systems that are incredibly effective. She turned to look at Gorath. Your species relies on natural weapons that have not changed in millions of years. My species has been constantly improving our fighting techniques for thousands of years, and we have never stopped. We are always learning, always adapting, always getting better. Gorath was silent for a moment. Then he made a sound that Emily had learned was the Krell version of a laugh. I thought humans were weak because you had no claws. Now I think you may be the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. No, Emily said, and her voice was serious. We are not dangerous because we can fight. We are dangerous because we never stop trying to improve. Whatever challenge we face, we will find a way to overcome it. That is what makes humans different. The lecture hall was completely silent. Every student was thinking about what they had just learned. The small, soft, weak humans were not what they seemed to be. Beneath their fragile exterior was a species that had turned fighting into an art form, and that had never stopped perfecting that art. Professor Voltron slowly nodded his large head. I believe, he said quietly, that I will need to submit a recommendation to revise the combat classification system. 3 months had passed since Emily's fight with Garth in the lecture hall. The recording of that fight had spread across the entire galaxy. It had been viewed billions of times on thousands of different planets. Military analysts from dozens of species had watched it over and over again, trying to understand how such a small creature had defeated such a powerful opponent. Emily stood in a large circular room in the headquarters of the Galactic Union. This was where the combat classification committee held their meetings. 12 representatives from 12 different species sat in a curved row behind a long table. They were the ones who decided how every species in the galaxy was ranked for combat purposes. The chairman of the committee was an old creature from a species called the Neth. The Neth were tall and thin, with long necks and large dark eyes. They were known for being fair and thoughtful. The chairman studied Emily for a long moment before speaking. After reviewing the evidence, the chairman said, "This committee has reached a decision regarding the combat classification of humans." Emily waited quietly. She had done her part. Whatever happened now was out of her hands. Humans are hereby reclassified from Category 7, Tool Dependent, to Category 3, Natural Apex Combatant. A murmur went through the room. Category 3 was reserved for the most dangerous species in the galaxy. It was the same category as the Crow, the Vorn, and other species with natural weapons that could kill easily. However, the chairman continued, "We are adding a special notation to this classification." "What notation?" Emily asked. The chairman looked at a document in front of him. "Notation: do not engage in close combat under any circumstances. Recommend maintaining minimum distance of 10 meters and using ranged weapons only. Under no circumstances should any personnel attempt hand-to-hand combat with a human unless absolutely necessary for survival." Behind Emily, someone made a sound that was like rocks grinding together. She turned and saw Gorath standing in the observation area. He was laughing. In the 3 months since their fight, Garth had become Emily's training partner. He had been so impressed by human martial arts that he had asked Emily to teach him. She had agreed, and they had been training together ever since. Gorath now wore patches on his armor that marked him as the first Krell to ever practice human fighting techniques. "The committee also wishes to extend an invitation," the chairman said. "We would like you to establish a training program for Galactic Union peacekeeping forces. Your fighting techniques have proven to be unexpectedly effective across species barriers. We believe many species could benefit from learning them." Emily thought about this for a moment. It was a big responsibility. Training peacekeeping forces for the entire galaxy would take years of work. But it was also an opportunity. An opportunity to share something that humans had spent thousands of years developing. An opportunity to help create peace across the stars. I accept, Emily said. But I will need help. There is too much knowledge for one person to teach. I will need to bring in other humans who have mastered different martial arts. That can be arranged, the chairman said. You will have whatever resources you need. 6 months later, the Galactic Academy opened a new department. It was called the School of Human Martial Traditions. The building was designed to hold students from hundreds of different species. There were training rooms with different gravity levels, different floor surfaces, and different environmental conditions. There were pools for aquatic species and heated rooms for species that needed warmth. Emily stood at the entrance on opening day. She wore a simple white uniform that was similar to what martial arts teachers wore on Earth. Behind her stood 12 other humans, each one a master of a different fighting style. There was a judo champion from Japan. There was a Muay Thai master from Thailand. There was a wrestling expert from America. There was a Taekwondo grandmaster from Korea. Together, they represented thousands of years of human combat knowledge. The first class of students walked through the doors. There were 47 different species represented. Krell with their heavy armor. Vorn with their tentacles. Insectoids like Professor Veltron. And many others that Emily did not recognize yet. All of them had come to learn what humans knew about fighting. Gorath was there too. He had earned a place as a teaching assistant after months of training. He was not as skilled as the human masters yet, but he was learning fast. His species had never needed to develop fighting techniques before. Now, with human teachers, they were finally learning what their bodies could really do. Professor Veltron attended the opening ceremony as a guest of honor. When reporters asked him for a comment about the new school, he simply said, "I have learned to never underestimate a species that fights for fun." Emily walked to the front of the main training hall. All of the students were watching her. Some were nervous. Some were excited. Some were skeptical. She had seen all of these reactions before, and she knew that by the end of their training, all of them would be changed. "Welcome to the School of Human Martial Traditions," Emily said. Her voice carried through the hall clearly. "Some of you are here because you want to become better fighters. Some of you are here because you want to protect others. Some of you are here because you are curious about what humans know. Whatever your reason, you are welcome here." She began to walk among the students as she spoke. "Over the next months and years, we will teach you many things. We will teach you how to use your body as a weapon. We will teach you how to turn your opponent's strength against them. We will teach you how to find weakness in any armor and exploit it." Emily stopped in the center of the hall. "But before we begin, there is one lesson that is more important than all the others. This is the first lesson that every human martial artist learns, and it is the foundation of everything we do." She looked around at all the different faces watching her. Creatures with scales and shells and fur and feathers. Creatures with claws and tentacles and stingers and horns. All of them were bigger and stronger than her. All of them had natural weapons that she did not have, and yet they had come here to learn from her. "A weapon you cannot drop," Emily said slowly. "Cannot be taken away." She raised her empty hands and showed them to the class. "Your claws can be cut off. Your armor can be broken. Your stingers can be removed. But the knowledge in your mind and the training in your body can never be taken from you. That is why we train. Not to hurt others, but to make ourselves impossible to defeat." She lowered her hands and smiled at her students. It was the same smile she had given Gorath before their fight. The smile that said she knew something they did not. "Now," Emily said, "let us begin." And across the galaxy, on 1,000 different planets, species that had never before considered their own bodies as weapons began to learn what humans had known for thousands of years. They learned that the most dangerous fighter is not the one with the biggest claws or the thickest armor or the deadliest venom. The most dangerous fighter is the one who never stops training, the one who never stops learning, the one who turns every weakness into a strength and every disadvantage into an opportunity, the one who, when everything else is taken away, still has the most powerful weapon of all. Themselves. In the years that followed, the School of Human Martial Traditions grew into the largest combat training institution in the galaxy. Students came from every corner of known space. Some became peacekeepers. Some became protectors. Some simply returned home with new knowledge and new skills. And whenever someone asked why humans were so good at fighting without weapons, the answer was always the same: because they never stopped trying to get better, because they treated combat as an art, because they practiced every day, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, and because, in the end, they understood something that most species never learned. The body is not a weakness to be overcome with tools. The body is the ultimate tool, waiting to be mastered.